All right. Does watching porn ruin sex and relationships? You just talked about these body types that are unrealistic, and the thought is that if someone can just click a button whenever they feel that urge, and then that urge goes away, that leaves less desire in the real world. And also when they're with their partners, if their partners don't do the crazy stuff they see in porn, if their partners' bodies don't look like the perfect people in porn, that kills affection as well. So I'll let
Totally.
you answer that.
I'm not a proponent of porn. I have seen porn hurt a ton of relationships. You can look up a website called Your Brain on Porn and you'll learn a lot about it. It's really compared. I don't know if they do this, but I read a study where it was compared to your brain on heroin, and it has the same detrimental effect. Over the years, it actually breaks down your brain. So, and then it also gets you caught up in the rat race of what society believes that or sex should and should not be. There's a lot, like porn is acting. It is acting and it is not real. There is more real pro woman porn that is coming out. But to my personal is I would rather you explore your own body, understand what turns you on and turns you off, and have more communication with your partner and explore them and their needs and desires. And then be creative with them. Because even if you watch more ethical porn, that may be the polar opposite to what your girl likes or your guy likes. So I would encourage everybody to be a little bit more vulnerable and take some risks and have courage to have the uncomfortable conversations and create your own magic, because it's in you, in all of us.
We have a question sent in from Megan Port. She wants to know, how do you navigate when one partner has a mental health disorder in a relationship? Now, this is hard to answer in a rapid fire, but I guess do your best.
It's tough. It's tough to answer quickly, and it's tough to be in. It would all depend on what they're dealing with their mental health. I would probably get some support, whether it's a coach that is experienced in whatever like type of mental health experience they're dealing with. And whether I would start independently, I would start with the person dealing by themselves with a coach or a therapist, and then I would bring her in. I think I heard that question, like it sounds like her partner is dealing with it and not her. So that's how I'm going to answer it. And then if she needs to switch, she can switch. But I would start with them independently working with a coach or a therapist, and then bringing her in to show how she can support him. In the meantime, I would encourage her to be curious about how she can support him versus assume how she can, right? We're all different. And I think asking like, hey, I care about you and I want to show up for you. This is what I naturally want to do. And I don't know if that's going to be helpful for you. Is there anything that you can share with me that would be more supportive while you're dealing with whatever challenge you're dealing with? Because sometimes people need their own space and other people get reactive with that, where that's where it's understanding it's not personal. It's just what that person actually needs. So I would get curious about what they need in that. Mental health stuff can be very challenging depending on how severe, how long, all of that is. So I would 100% be bringing in a third person to help navigate that because it can be very challenging.
So we have a question sent in from the East Coast of Canada. This is from Ben Curley. How does someone build a stronger relationship with their partner if your job takes you out of town regularly? I do shift work as a tradesman in the oil field. Last mega project I was at, I saw like 10 marriages end, and COVID probably had something to do with it as well. Yeah. So that's his question.
Intention and effort. The thing is we live in a world right now that gives us so much freedom to stay connected to people, even if it isn't face to face. And it'll never be as good as, I do not think that it should be. I think it should be used as a supplement, not as like a source, which if you're traveling for work, that is a supplement. And it's like intention and effort, going out of your way for FaceTime and Zoom, seeing your partner, not just texting them and talking to them on their phone, hearing their voice, seeing their expression. If her love language is like gifts, you can like send little gifts that show up that are delivered that you don't even have to deliver to let her know you're thinking about her. You can get card games, which are awesome. There's one called, I have it, it's called We're Not Really Strangers. It's awesome. It's a card game that has questions that you normally wouldn't ask your partner. That when you're on your Zoom, you're asking these questions. So you're actually intentionally getting to know your partner more in a connected way versus talking about your day, right? Like maybe you spend 5 minutes, but maybe you don't want to talk about the oil rigs for 3 hours with your partner on a Zoom. I can promise you she doesn't, I don't want to make assumptions, but she probably doesn't want to hear about it for 3 hours either, right? So it's like being intentional with the type of conversation and being intentional with bringing the card decks and different things into your relationship that sparks new conversation that you haven't had. And then the effort in what are you doing when you're with your partner, right? Do you get home from the oil rigs and you're exhausted, so you just zone out with video games and beer and your guys? Or do you come home and you just grab your wife and you let her know like how much she means to you, how much you appreciate her for partnering with you in a challenging long distance partnership due to work? Do you guys have date night? Do you go out of your way to make love in different ways? Do you have adventure and do different things? Or do you just watch movies when you go home? Like, have little adventures, like go and drive somewhere randomly, get out and make out in the middle of like a rainstorm, or for me, a mountaintop. But it's like do things that are exciting because that will give you energy to keep it exciting in your relationship. So again, intention and effort. And you can definitely have, especially in today's day and age, a long distance relationship like that and have it work. It's when people, both men and women, give up and just assume that the relationship will work by itself. Nothing works by itself. You give up on your business, it will fail. You give up on your relationship, it will fail. Partnerships are partnerships, and they require effort and intention.
I feel like that card game would be awesome on a first date, like to break the ice and ask questions that, totally. It's not stuck on you where it's just silence and you have to come up with the perfect questions. I feel like if you come in with that, it feels like you thought about it, and yeah, I'll watch back this episode and write down what that card game was.
We're not really strangers. It's so good.
We're not really strangers. Last couple of questions. When you look back on your life and your career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I would definitely say following my heart in the sense of taking risks, like talking about the things that we're told we're not supposed to talk about, moving across a country when it doesn't make sense in the middle of a pandemic, traveling Southeast Asia for 3 months, part solo, part not. I think the biggest thing is having the courage to take the risks, because it, like, my soul knows, even though my human doesn't understand it. It's like, I've said so many times, I'm like, God, why didn't you just make me a lawyer? Right? Because it would make sense to everybody else. I can tell you, I have yet to meet a person that when they say, Jess, what do you do? And I say, I'm a holistic intimacy and relationship coach. I always get a reaction. Always. Oh, what is that? Right? What does that mean? Do you, like, all the time? It's never, oh yeah, cool. It's always, there's always more to it, even if it's just facial expressions. So sometimes I have to remind myself even of that, because it would be easier to, not easier, but it would be easier to be accepted into society if I did the normal things, a doctor, a lawyer, things like that. Not to say those aren't hard, they are, but they're acceptable to society. Where a woman that publicly speaks about taboo topics every day and with clients in like the most troubling moments of their life, you get a lot of raised eyebrows. And I've had to learn to have some thick skin, because sometimes you don't know what those raised eyebrows mean, and to detach from that and just believe that it's coming from love. And when I trigger people, it's like, I'm here to have a conversation. But yeah, so I would say that would be what I was most proud of, is to have the courage to take the risks when they feel terrifying.
Last question. If we had a time machine, if we could go back in time and you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self. So you have cute little Jessica Mowforth sitting beside you
Yeah.
with all these years of lessons and mentorship and personal growth and experiences and triumphs and failures. What advice do you give to your 10-year-old self?
I would say to remember who I was as that 10-year-old girl, because in the next couple of years, things are going to change dramatically. And who you are as this 10-year-old is at the core of your joy. And what I mean by that, because I know that a 10-year-old would not even understand what I just said, but at 10, I was so free and liberated and like unapologetic. And very shortly after, like literally maybe a year and a half, 2 years after that, everything changed and everything became significant. What's coming up for me most is like body image and what I need to look like in order to be loved and approved. And it really took the innocence away from me for a long time. And I would say to my 10-year-old self to remember this moment right now and how free you are in the playfulness of who you are right now. And that will be magic and a superpower even at 50 years old. So to bottle that and to keep coming back to that, not just innocence, but play and like joy to just be in mud puddles catching tadpoles versus the rigidity of fitting into a mold for the purpose of someone else. Because I've had to relearn and reteach and reparent myself to get back to that, because it's easy to lose the playfulness because of the responsibilities, because of the pressure, because of the molds, the narratives, right? So that's, I would come back to playfulness and just hold on to that and never let it go.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
So when you asked me, like, what am I most proud of? I also thought of the thing that I would probably say I don't want to say I'm least proud of it, but I think it would be beneficial to the listeners, is it's not a regret, but it's something looking back that I'm like, that is a massive lesson. And that is staying somewhere I know I don't belong because it's not in alignment, not because someone else is telling me I don't belong, longer than I could have and possibly should have. And I think of, I don't even know if you knew this, but I owned a holistic retail store for almost 8 years. And I knew I was done that business 3 years before I left it. And I've done that in relationships, stayed in relationships longer than I knew that I wanted to. And that would probably be something that, again, it's not like a big regret or a fail, but it's a big, big lesson of being still enough to connect and trust in your intuition to make decisions. Because I have asked myself, I wonder if I actually got out of this business when I meant to. And I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be for sure. I still trust in my process, but I see how I had patterns in both business and relationship because of what I thought it meant to my identity, right? Like people knew I owned the store. It made me look good, even though it was the most stressful experience of my life in so many ways. And I could have cut the cord and I didn't. And same with relationships. So I think it's also trusting that inner nudge and that guidance to know when it's time to stay and when it's time to go, and trusting the power in that, because I've never felt so free being outside of those experiences. And yet I felt like I needed those in order, like, to be free. And it's like, wow, hindsight's 2020, and seeing it from the outside looking in, it's like, if you, a listener, are in a situation that you know is not where you want to be, bite the bullet. It will serve you. It'll feel terrifying, but it will serve you.